Welcome to Harvesting Maine, brought to you by Real Maine, a promotional program of the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. Our conversations with Real Maine members take us behind the scenes and through the seasons, reminding us that there are many good reasons to choose Real Maine farm products. We're getting to know the people growing a variety of goodness in Maine. In our fifth episode, we're getting real, not imaginary, with real or sincere talk about fiber and conifers. It's the real deal, not synthetic or artificial. Let's meet our guests. Welcome, Marianne and Marty. Let's start with you. Please introduce yourselves. Tell us the name of your farm and where you're joining us from today.
My name is Marty Elkin. Um, the name of our farm is A Wrinkle in Time Farm, taken from the book by Madeline L'Engle and modified slightly for the time being like the herb, Thyme.
Yeah, I'm Mary Ann Haxton, and we live in Sumner, which is southern Oxford County, western foothills. We're kind of smack dab in the middle, about 40 to 45 minutes from Bethel, Farmington, Auburn, and Norway, South Paris, and Augusta.
How long have you been farming?
We bought our property in 1995 and had our first sheep born here in 1997. So I guess we'd say we started farming that year, 97. And we also made maple syrup the first time, but it was like a pint. So, just a dabble.
Just a dabble. All right. Well, let's also meet Matt, who's representing our conifer side of our topics tonight. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Hey, no problem. My name is Matthew Quinn. I run Quinn's Tree Farm up here in Cornwall, Maine, just north of Skowhegan. It's been a 3-year venture. I started out with 3 acres in 2019, and then this year we expanded to an 8-acre farm where we end up also managing another 25 acres. We plant balsam fir, Fraser fir, and I do have a couple of exotic Korean firs, which are really kind of neat, but really difficult to grow. And just do real Christmas trees because nothing beats a real Christmas tree.
That's a great point. So it reminds me of why we've actually brought these two seemingly different topics together for our fifth episode. Got a little punny there talking about getting real and not imaginary and sincere, but not synthetic or artificial, which is really what brings these two topics together. We're talking about real Maine Christmas trees, real Maine trees, one of those quintessential perennial items. And we're talking about real Maine fiber production as well, which Marianne and Marty, you've been doing for many years. You do a few different things. Tell us a little bit about the products that you do with your fiber production.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, we have, did we already say 33 sheep? And last year we had 24 lambs, I think, which was a big change for us. We were usually closer to 12 sheep, 12 lambs in the spring. But anyway, our main product are time tiles, which are kits that allow people who think they don't have any talent to create beautiful little pictures of all kinds of things, including animals and scenery and Santa Claus and angels and you name it. And we have probably have a kit, or if we don't, we'll make one. So yeah, that's our main product. We also sell our yarn from our sheep. Um, what else?
Well, the production, we have them shorn here and do some of the fiber prep before it goes out to a Maine. We have been supporting Maine businesses through the fiber production, either in roving or in yarn. And we have a Mainer who comes from Wiscasset to shear our sheep. So, and all the fiber that goes into the time tiles is dyed here, turned in. So it's all natural sheep.
And the images are hand drawn, a little 5x5 square of
100% wool.
100% wool. So it makes it it's like coloring with wool. It's very fun.
That's a good way to describe it. I've seen these time tiles on display at different pop-up stores or markets. I think the Freiburg Fair has been a place where you've had your products year after year. So these time tiles, I really like that, coloring with wool. Tell me a little bit more about a couple words you use. So you use the word shearing or shorn and roving. So what does that actually mean if I don't know anything about fiber products? I mean, I'm lucky that I can get my slippers and my hats together. So what does it actually mean?
Well, a sheep will grow. We have dual purpose animals, so that's a Romney, Corriedale, Finn sheep, some border Leicesters, and so they produce fiber growing to where they can be shorn every 8 to 12 months, and so that fiber is then at being shorn. The animal then is good. We don't. There is no harm to the animal who is shorn. They live to play another day, and so then that fiber is kind of cleaned up a little bit because over winter and over summer they get manure tags, and so it's skirted, and then it's washed, and then we send it off either to be turned into roving, which is a bit of a carding process where the fiber is straightened a little bit into a long string, which is balls of roving we have all over the store, and then if it's other fiber, then it goes to be spun and goes to a fiber mill over in Waldoboro, who is retiring soon, and then it's dyed. So it's dyed after it's turned either into roving or to yarn, and that roving is made into little balls that go into the time towel kit. So it's a fairly I guess you'd say a long process, and all humanly done. So it involves production, paying attention to the sheep all year long. We rotationally graze. We have about 15 acres of open field, and then over the time we've been here, we've kind of pushed back the edges of fields, and they rotate in amongst most of the trees we have are either conifers like fir or pine, and then the maple trees too. So our animals are part of that production that we have on the farm.
So a time tile is actually done by taking a specialized needle that has little barbs on it and laying the wool on top of the picture that you're doing with the color that you want, and poking at that with the needle so that it pushes the wool through the background felt and creates a beautiful picture. And it's really easy to do, and it's fun, and it's quick. And if you make a mistake or you decide you want a different color, you can take off the one you didn't like and replace it with some other color. And our kids have more than enough wool so that if you save your leftovers, you can do your own creations.
That's pretty exciting. Yeah, so it's like it's a way to be involved in the process of what you all do for farming year round, minute to minute, but still kind of get creative with it, which I think people tend to really enjoy about agriculture and so on. Now that you mentioned that the sheep and the lambs, they are actually out exploring fields and pastures, and you've got a few different perennials on your farm, so we can't not talk about two of the favorite perennials. One of them we've already discussed, which is the sugar maple, but you talked about conifers as well. So it's kind of getting to our point where things are really full circle in Maine agriculture. And I guess I'd turn it over to Matt and say, tell us a little bit about kind of your products and what you're providing. It's certainly been a busy season for you.
Well, we provide memories. We provide good times, and we provide happy families and Christmas events. So we grow Christmas trees, and we talk about conifers. The balsam fir is the mainstay of our Christmas tree field, and I would say the majority across the state. In fact, our seed source comes from the Maine Christmas Tree Association seed orchard in Norwich Walk, and then there's one in Allagash, and we get our seeds off these trees that were genetically superior Christmas tree stock. And I say that they go to college because right now the nursery that grows the seedlings into saleable seedlings is up in Sherbrooke, New Hampshire, Sherbrooke, Quebec. So I say that the trees go off to college, they see the world a little bit, and they're kids, and then they come back and they grow up and they live their lives. And it's a 7 to 10 year rotation is about how long it takes to get a tree to height. And height is typically, it's all in the eye of the beholder. And I say there's a tree for every home and a home for every tree. And some of them are, they're all perfectly imperfect, so to speak. But a tree typically in the state of Maine, so our retail lot, houses are going to run 6 to 8 feet with some cathedral ceiling trees running 10 feet and higher. We do have a lot of people who have the log cabins and the A-frame ski resort type things that like the really tall trees. And when it's time to harvest, we cut the trees down and we bring them into the lot. We bale them up. I have a machine that like spins all this twine around them, and synthetic twine, but it pulls them through, and we load them up, and then we load them on trucks for our wholesale and send them across the eastern seaboard. This year I had trees go all the way down to Virginia. And then we have a retail lot where we sell trees to our friends and neighbors. We do a choose and cut field, so that's where people go out and they cut their own Christmas trees, and people really like that a lot, and it gives them the fresh, the tree is as fresh as it gets, because the longer it stays on the stump, the better off it's going to be, and the longer it's going to be in the home. And I'm very proud of it. But I've had customers of mine tell me that they've had their trees up well into February. If they stay watered, they'll stay fresh. And yeah, that's kind of that. But the biggest thing about it is I think people get into this job and they think that you just plant trees and then in 7 or 10 years they're going to be okay. And for Charlie Brown Christmas trees, that certainly is a thing, and then it can be doable. But they really take constant care and constant work. So we have the season. The best thing that I like about the season is every part of the year is different. So obviously, I just hit a wall. I said before we got on live that December 25th came up and I hit a wall, and it just comes to a halt. And we're kind of in the slow down phase, and I'm sitting here in my chair talking to you guys tonight because I don't have much else going on. But pretty soon we'll get back at it. We're going to start in April. We'll plant new seedlings, and they go in the ground, and just take a little bar and make a little V in the ground and put them in. Then we have to mow, and every year, every tree that is going to be harvestable has to be sheared. Not unlike the sheep, and it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt the tree, just like it doesn't hurt the sheep. But it does get them into that proper shape and that nice cone that we all like to see. There's a ton of different ways to do it, from machinery to hand shearing with clippers. My dad actually they look like big scissors, and I use a shearing knife. It really, the best thing the closest thing I can describe it as is it really looks like a bread knife right out of your kitchen, but just a little bit longer, and they are sharp. And you just start slicing the trees and get them to that shape. Typically, we start that around July, the end of July, August, and early September. And then we, in the other parts of the season, we have to mow the fields. We want to make sure that the fields are nice and well kept and mowed to keep down any competitors. So if there's a limited amount of nutrients in the ground, we want that going right to the tree. And then I really try to hold off on my wholesale harvesting to this year. I started about the 7th of November. I really wanted to push it back. Maybe I think I started on a Thursday. I should have waited till Monday, but you got to do what you got to do, right? So and then we for 6 weeks we're just cutting trees and baling them up and moving them out, and that's kind of the cycle. So in a nutshell, so to speak, there's a lot more to it, but
Yeah, I think that's a good nutshell to to summarize it. So you both have talked about kind of this, I guess what I would call the ecological importance of managing things. And so Matt, you touched on this a little bit, and um, Marianne and Marty, I'm wondering if you would kind of delve into this too. And what I'm getting at is the final product, right? So what goes into all this effort that you've been putting in um, to really put some finesse on that final product? Like Matt, you talked about it, getting that cone shape on the trees. Is there anything, Marianne and Marty, that needs to be done to have the final wool product like to be in tip-top condition? Like where does that start in the process?
It starts with the nutrition of the sheep. They and the fact that they are grazing pasture, and if they get into burdock or thistle or a lot of other things, it's not good for their fiber. So we try to keep the fields open, and the while it's good for butterflies, the milkweed is not good for sheep. So we those are a few things that we keep out of the pasture. Um,
We've bred our sheep for softness of their wool, as well as crimp, which is waviness in it that gives it its elasticity, and um, and also we try to keep a balance between white and black sheep. Black sheep are born black, and then as they grow, they get lighter and lighter, and in their adult phase, they are gray, which is, and that so that's the next thing to think about is dyeing the wool. We like to use natural dyeing, which is involves growing indigo and dye gardens. I also grow madder root, which gives a reddish, a brick red color. Indigo gives a beautiful blue color and some greens, and that many plants give a beautiful yellow. So
majority of them probably.
those are your three primary colors that can be combined in order to get a variety of colors.
We also use acid dyes, which are produced here in Maine at Cushing's down south.
Yeah, and I do over 50 colors of acid dyed wool. So
You do you create the colors is basically what you're telling me, because you're taking those primary colors that you need, and we all probably learned this back in kindergarten maybe, or
yes,
a little later, but when you combine certain primary colors you're going to get the whole color spectrum. So
exactly right.
how long
So
does that take?
I like to do a class once or twice a year so that other people who want to learn how to dye can have as much fun as I do. I also just invite people sometimes to come and spend a day in the dye kitchen with me and just learn about the whole dyeing process.
Oh, that's awesome. I think this is such an exciting topic for me because we've heard so many people when we are talking about, why we should be promoting Maine products, why we should be choosing and how we can choose a variety of Maine farm products. And for both of these topics, really, what you said, Matt, is making memories is a huge part about it, right? So it's about the educational component
Mhm.
as well. Like what do you tell people, Matt, when folks show up and they know that they have that Christmas spirit or that nostalgic feeling? Do you also kind of say, "Oh, by the way, I here's my extra long, looks like a bread knife tool. Let's put this in concept." Probably not. How do people make the connection behind the effort that you've put in year round?
Uh, well, I'm sure when they give me the money, they say that, wow, like there must be a lot of work that goes into that because these things are, I think I have a fair price, but it does take money to do it. Uh, I don't know. I think that they just they go out and they look at the trees and uh, my choosing cut field this year was the full. I probably had 7 or 8 acres open, and we have some people run out, looks good, back in, and then I had a couple. Uh, it had to be they were either this. It was either I don't know if they were married or not, but it was either their first year together or the first year together as a husband and wife. And it was the first weekend where it rained, It was a Saturday that it was just miserable and it rained, and they went out. They had to be out there for like a good hour, and it's pouring, and I'm thinking to myself, guys, like this, just grab a tree and get back in here, like it's miserable. And they came back in with this smile on their face, like it was the best thing that they ever had done. And for me, I'm thinking to myself, when they walk away, they're gonna know that 20 years down the road, remember that first Christmas that we had, or we were out
Mm.
there looking for the perfect tree for us in the middle of that rainstorm. I really don't get into it too much about how to grow and things like that. Typically, just because the retail lot is so busy. But I certainly love to answer anybody's questions and things like that. Most people just want to know how long it takes to grow, um, because it seems like a long term investment, and it is. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind of. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
so there must be people who come year after year and kind of watch the crop grow too, and
Yeah,
see how
yeah.
they've in a year's time.
Uh, Definitely. One thing that I found, and I think you'll any tree grower will tell you that your customers are very loyal. Once they find the farm that works for them and the farm that fits for them, they continue to come back year after year after year. Uh, which to the point, the farm that I bought, the owner, he had passed away this summer, and people were very happy that it had gotten purchased and that we were going to continue, because they didn't quite know what they were going to do if they didn't come out to Cornville to get their Christmas tree. Uh, which really surprised me. Actually, I was quite taken aback that it was that important to them that it came from our farm, or this particular farm.
Yeah. The that there's always this phrase that people talk about, the quality of place, the quality of space and taste, when we're talking about local agricultural products, which can happen in a lot of different ways, but those kind of special moments as well really harken to community. Have you found that as well, Marianne and Marty?
Yeah, I think it for us it begins with actually with maple sugaring because it comes. Well, we're getting ready in February and March, but we also try to have a coordinate time that when Maple Sunday comes, we have lambs in the barn,
Hmm.
so that and we have people who've been coming to the farm, well, for as long as over 10, 15 years since we've been doing Maple Sunday, and we've watched their kids grow up, and they come back every year to see who's new in the barn. And I think that um, really helps to create the sense of community, and we get to meet people who have a real interest in sheep. And in fact, we have what we call an adopt a sheep program, where somebody who can't have can't doesn't have the physical space or can't manage having sheep, they can adopt a lamb or an adult sheep and come and spend time with us. They can shovel manure or help rotating the sheep during the summer, but they get that first fleece off that animal or a fleece from the animal. So we're all the time trying to encourage people to pay attention to how an animal's raised and how happy they are when we have some people who adopted lambs last year that they'll call them and they'll come. So
Really?
they come often enough that they've gotten to be recognized.
Very friendly sheep.
Yeah,
That's
I
one of our
would say
goals.
so.
Except
Very
when
friendly sheep.
except when
Yeah.
they know we're chasing and need them to catch them, either to give them a shot or something, then they'll take off. But most of the time, they come right up to us, which
Yeah.
I think is a good thing to communicate to people, and it's a real asset for us to have friendly sheep.
Right, because I mean, you do need to be able to work around these sheep on a daily basis. This is your livelihood. You don't need animals being wild, and farm animals typically aren't, right? I mean, some can be a little skittish,
An
but
ornery, or
an
we have to
ornery.
we always we have one ram who is lives on the farm right now, but we've had other rams that if they aren't friendly or at least um, calm enough, they don't stay because we have children who come on the farm, and it's just too important to us. Well, to us too, who are getting past the time when we can dodge an animal very quickly. Um, so we need to have animals that are willing to cooperate.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's like having a nice a coworker or colleague. You want ones that you can get along with. I think most
Exactly.
people can relate to that.
Yeah, they all have names, so they're all named. And when we produce the wool for yarn and so on, it has a picture of that animal that goes with the skein of yarn that's sold. So there's a history there. We have a family tree on the wall in the tesseract that shows where all they come from. So
And a lot of our customers like to go out and meet the sheep in the field or behind the barn. And we'll ask to do that, and we always accommodate that with a little tour of the animals.
Have you had any newlyweds going out there on rainy days?
well,
Not that I know of.
well, we've had what the one thing that I think of is that we had a young couple. I think they had one infant at the time, and they adopted two sheep. And then the next year they decided to buy those sheep, and that was probably 10 years ago. And they now have four children, and they are the farm that we take our fiber to be turned into roving. So they they connected with those animals and had them for quite a while till their kids got
That's
really big.
exciting. Like a whole
Yeah.
nother farm cropped up out of this, kind of volunteer effort and community outreach. That's really, really cool.
And that is something that we hope to do with people who are interested, is help them get started with their own flock of sheep.
Yeah. What does it take to start your own flock of sheep? Do you need to have all the setup? Like what should you have if you wanted to just start a flock? Are you all of a sudden like in a month, in 2 months, if I buy it in the springtime, will I be able to have my own little ball of yarn? Like what's the realistic timelines on this?
Well, I think for us, from our experience, starting with at least two animals, they are a herd animal, so they like to have company. So at least two, and I think the primary thing that would be necessary would be fencing. And it doesn't have to be a lot. If you just have a couple of sheep, then they because we rotate and we encourage people to rotate because that enhances the quality of the soil and the grass. Um, then it doesn't take a lot of acreage. Probably 2 or 3 acres would be more than enough for a couple of sheep to rotate through. So fencing, and then adequate fresh water source, and sheep need to be kept either in a fence that they can't go through, like a field fence, or else if they use electric fencing, it needs to be electrified.
Mm. Yeah.
So once they have their sheep and they're grazing and shearing time comes, we invite them to bring their fleece to our farm and learn how to process that, how to wash it, how to card it. And if they want it turned into yarn, we facilitate that process as well.
Marty also teaches spinning and knitting. So we
Hand
kind
spinning.
of hand spinning. So we kind of so the whole circle so people could be able to figure the whole thing out.
The full experience. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so this is kind of the other question that I have that relates to both our conifer and our fiber topics, which is how have the last, I don't know, what are we going on, 20 months now of people kind of saying, oh, well, like I'm paying attention to local products, I'm getting to know shorter supply chains. How has that impacted your business? Have you done any different changes to it given that we've had a pandemic, or was it just business as usual? Matt, go ahead.
I think for me, it was really business as usual. One of the, I will say that the Christmas tree sales, especially in 2020 and then again in 2021, were explosive. Last year, 2020 season, we had farms across the United States and in Maine as well sell out our first weekend. People were just ready to get outside and go do something. Uh, this year was steady. The biggest difference, I think, from this year to last year was people were more apt to travel this year. So last year we had a lot of people who said, I can't go see my parents. I can't go and fly out to these locations. So we're going to have a tree here at the house. It was still quite busy compared to 2019 and 18, where those were normal years, for lack of a better term. Luckily for me, my entire business is outside, so you could social distance all you want in 10 to 12 acres of fields and things like that. So that wasn't such a big deal, but it was definitely busier, uh, and
Mm.
which is a good thing for us.
I think we had a little different experience because
Mm.
we were loading up to go to a wholesale show in March of 2020. In fact, we were loading the truck on the weekend that they canceled the show and shut down. So COVID was starting right up. So for us, it really meant an end to, as the months passed by, to all of our retail or agricultural fair connections.
Prior to that, we'd had done 12 fairs in a year. And the first year we did none, right? And last year we
Well,
did.
we did. We had an
three
event in February before
before
COVID
it
started,
Yeah.
and then everything else was canceled beyond that.
And then this past year, we've done 3 shows. Um,
We had hoped to do Common Ground, but it got canceled again. So, but Freiburg went ahead and happened, and Marty does natural dyeing on the porch in the Fiber Center at Freiburg, and so what was the third show we did?
maybe it wasn't 3. Maybe it was only
Just
2.
You just had such a good time. We're so busy.
Right. The other thing I think that really changed for us is that we had previously not participated in what they call a yarn cruise. There's a yarn shop in Freeport that sponsors this yarn cruise that is a tour. You get a passport and go visit all of the 18 or 19 yarn shops around Maine. And so we participated in that this year. And that was kind of really a saving grace for us because that started the 1st of July and ran into middle of October. And we had people coming, I wouldn't say every day, but clearly very busy through the summer. And getting people here who had never been here, didn't know we existed, really enjoyed getting out. And, they were having the opportunity to get out. We did masking and social distancing, and I think that was
kept
really,
one family unit at a time.
yeah,
Mhm.
didn't have a lot of, that normally is not an issue for us because we're kind of out in the willywags.
So yarn cruise, we don't mean like actually going on a boat to
boat.
to knit, but just touring across different yarn shops. So what is like, did you find new customers who hadn't been using like these types of more natural products, non-synthetic, not artificial? What's the big
I think it's
difference?
but definitely people who are knitters, and have stashes and really appreciate the 100% wool. We have all the fiber that's in our store is 100% natural fiber. It's either wool, we do blend with alpaca or angora, so we don't have any processed,
No acrylic.
no the merino that's been, what do they call it, chemically superwash merino. So everything needs to be treated with, not with kid gloves, but paid attention to that it is a natural fiber, and you have to be nice to it.
So you can't just like beat it with, your
throw it in the washer and dryer and it's going to turn into a doll size.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of an educational component when we're talking about these natural non-synthetic fibers, right? So because we've been used to, I guess, pre-shrunk textiles for decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is, Anne, the fiber shed is the other piece of that natural process that I think Marty's participated in, and trying to kind of get more involved in for using natural dyes. So our natural dye garden gets bigger every year, and try to use a natural process for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Matt, I'd love your take on, you probably don't have people cruising from, the artificial and synthetic Christmas trees, learning about how to buy a real Christmas tree. But what are the significant differences? Why? I mean, not just for the memory's sake.
Well,
Why would we go real?
well, for starters, the only tree is a tree. Those cone-shaped plastic artificial tree-like decoration hangers that you can find in the big box store are just that. They're plastic tree-like decoration hangers, and there are a ton of reasons why real trees are better than those non-tree like things. Uh, the first one is it's a renewable resource. So right out of the gates, we're planting trees. We're planting about 1,000 trees an acre at my field. 1 acre of Christmas trees provides enough oxygen for 18 of my neighbors every day. That means that I can't do the math in my head really fast, but I'm providing oxygen for a lot of my neighbors. So straight out of the gates, that's where is a really important thing. I provide habitat for our avian friends, as well as our little critters and our deer uh, and other animals. It's an area for them to be able to have protection, but at the same time that they can walk through the fields. It really is a cash crop. It's no different than corn or any other seasonal cash crop, except that our cash crop takes 7 to 10 years to grow. The one thing this is really important, and it's really important. I call these times the dark times, and literally because it's gets dark early. But uh, they have found studies, and I don't know where I read it, but I know I did. That say that real trees are better for your mental health during the holiday season. They connect you to the outdoors more than an artificial decoration hanger can. The reason being is when you pull in one of those decoration hangers, they are just another piece of plastic that is already in your house, just like everything else. But when you pull in a Christmas tree, a conifer that smells like a tree, it feels like a tree, it sheds like a tree because it is a tree that has mental health properties that will make you happier. There's just no two ways about it. Uh, Everything about the tree process goes back into the earth, the whole thing. So I did have trees that I cut this year, and unfortunately, those trees did not get to provide the memories that they yearn to when we plant to them. Because yes, I do talk to my Christmas trees, and I tell them that they're going to have a really nice life, and why wouldn't you? But the thing is they get to go back into the ground. And they get to rot, and they get to provide nitrogen, and all those other things back into the earth, which in turn are going to grow more Christmas trees. Uh, and that's that. There's just no two ways about it. They are in every way superior. Uh, Christmas trees take 7 to 10 years to grow. I sell my Christmas trees anywhere from 40 to. I had a couple that I sold for 80 this year. In the cities, they'll go for higher. A good solid cone-shaped decoration hanger will cost you anywhere between $250 and $800. Funny thing is, typically people are buying those every 6 to 8 to 10 years and getting new ones because they break, they get old, they're not as pretty as they used to be, and then they go into the landfill where they sit and they don't rot and they don't biodegrade and they don't give anything back to the earth, and there's nothing that can grow out of them ever again. Uh, so I can't think of any other way than to say that real Christmas trees are environmentally friendly. They're hands down better for the environment. They put good Maine people to work. I had to hire help to help me cut my trees this year. Uh, there's no two ways about it. They're just better.
And that
That's a,
smell.
And the
yeah.
smell. It's the smell of Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
It truly is. You
Yep.
smell a balsam fir in the middle of June or July, it brings you right back to December.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Marianne and Marty, um, could you talk a little bit about kind of those ecological points that Matt brought up? How is that the same or different? Where are the similarities for non-synthetic fiber products?
Well, I think it's kind of the thing. It's a closed loop. Again, when we shear, there's the belly wool and the manure tags and all the stuff that comes off the animal. Those are all that's still protein that can be composted, can go on ornamentals. We found that it doesn't quite work to put them out around the blueberries, but because the weeds grow up through them. But we can compost all the fiber, and then through the process of by rotating the sheep through the fields, we rotate through about 12 acres 5 times during the season, from middle of May till November. And so they're spreading their manure on a daily basis so that it doesn't accumulate, except over the winter when they're in the barn. We also kind of are working toward somewhere in the near future trying to build a food forest or forage for the animals that comes out of. You can also harvest or prune trees so that they become more forage for the animals. Something that I've learned a little bit about and don't know enough to really make it happen. But it's called pollarding, where you actually have the forage down at a level that the sheep can eat, and you rotate sheep through that as well. So our 30 acres supports the animals. The manure is spread on the fields. We do put in down lime, but we've had fields that were pine and fir that had gone to were originally pasture 50 years ago and had totally grown up, and we had some of it harvested so we could go back to pasture. And with just rotating the sheep and keeping it mowed, the grass has come back, so you don't have to seed. So the nature kind of takes care of itself by growing using the resources that we have, and don't have to bring in outside.
And the wool is very durable. Marianne has a sweater that she made when she was in high school, and it's still a beautiful sweater all these many years later.
Right. And it didn't get shrunk. She knew the techniques
she knew how to take care of it and has taken care of it. Yeah. And if she did shrink it, it can be made into mittens and sewn as a felted item, or made into swants, which is pants made out of sweaters. Or
wait, tell me more about the swants.
We have someone who comes to one of our retreats, yarn yoga retreat, and she's a very creative person, and so she'll take sweaters and literally cut them up and kind of sew them together so that they become a pair of pants. So it's a sweater turned into pants,
and they're comfortable.
Yeah. Wow.
So like sweat pants that are made out of wool.
So did you tell everyone who was on the cruise, like, if you make it through, the next 12 months and you come back on the yarn cruise and you accidentally shrunk everything because you're new to non-synthetic fibers, contribute to our Swants collective?
Could be. Yeah. So I think the other thing is that wool is an insulator. It doesn't burn. It's very popular as a fireplace mat. We use it to use on cast iron stoves handles, pots handles, because it insulates well and you'll stay warm even when it's wet. So there's just all kinds of qualities to the fiber that endear it to really more use. And I think we get used to the idea that fleece or polyester is warm, but I think we've kind of lost that sense that wool can serve that purpose much better.
Wool is much warmer, and I'm always saddened to think about hats and mittens made for children because they can be thrown in the washing machine. How often do you really need to wash your hat and mittens? Once a year, maybe not. But if they're wool, they are so much warmer. The even when they're wet, they're warm on your hands. So we're wool believers.
Yeah.
Believers in wool. That's great. I think we should have like like a fashion show, right? And we could have the Swants Collective, and then we could do that like the runway would be like a couple different balsam lineups, maybe it would be a nice
There we
backdrop
go.
Yeah.
along those pieces.
Yeah.
And I joke about that, but I do think there's something to seeing these products, out there and in practice. And we're getting a few comments just on the background here with people who are like, they're so excited to even learn that these are possibilities and they're right next door. They're glad that somebody's giving them, oxygen to breathe, and that they're putting in the effort to make sure that happens, and that they're keeping them warm. Like really basic, fundamental things that we need. And they're coming, just a short trip down the road when we're also putting inputs and contributions to our communities and local businesses. So that brings me to this other question that I ask all of our guests, which is a pretty basic one, right? We all understand agriculture and its value, but Marianne and Marty, I'd love to hear from you and just tell me, like, why is supporting local agriculture so important? Why do we even need it? Why do we need to be having these conversations?
Well, I think Matthew has talked about it a lot. If we don't have the protection of our woodlands and our fields, we don't have the air to breathe, and where we need to be able to have this resource base available to us. And I think the state of Maine really pays attention to that. I mean, we are mostly forested as a state, um, and maybe less than we were a couple hundred years ago. But it is a resource that enables us to have a healthy environment. And if we don't have that environment, then our health is compromised. And I think that's the same for the animals that we try and support and take care of. Not all of them will be wool producers for many years. Sometimes the male sheep we can't keep but a few of our boys, and so they go to meat. But they've had a happy life, and they've contributed to the quality of life on our farm by being here.
And we save their pelts and
Yep.
put their pelts to good use.
For sureling. Yeah.
Yeah, and so everything of the animal is used, and I think that's the aspect of kind of if we had less having to bring in. So from, I mean, I would prefer that we as a country were producing at least half of our goods, and if we could reduce the amount of goods we get from away, then one will employ more people, will put more people to work, and they will have more quality of life than having that resource base kind of come from away and go away.
Less disposableness
Right,
to it.
less disposable, more recycling. We'd be more resilient as a community. So I've always been part of really wanting to be resilient and sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points. Matt, what's your take on why it matters?
Well, because it's us. When you're buying local and you're buying from your neighbors, you're buying from people that you might need someday or that you're going to depend on, and back and forth. I talk about this in my professional career, but New England and Maine especially is very unique, and it has its upsides and its downsides. But we're very independent. Our Yankeedom runs right through us, and it goes back to when we were founded. When Maine was settled, it that independence, that local community aspect of Maine is really important. And at the end of the day, those are the people that you're going to depend on. And if we take care of each other, we're only going to be more successful. I'm very lucky. My At the end of the day, do you need a Christmas tree? Probably not. But you definitely need yarn. You definitely need food. We definitely need agriculture, and we need those items that are local now more than ever, because we might not be able to get those from other places when we want them like we have. If the Piscataqua Bridge falls apart, we're in trouble. So it's really nice to be able to depend on your local growers and your local friends and neighbors who have these things to be able to use when the time arises.
Yeah, that's a
And
good point.
there's no two ways about it. Maine strawberries, Maine apples, Maine yarn, Maine Christmas trees. They just all taste better, feel better, and look better. So, there's that too.
I think that's well
Well
put.
said. Well said.
I think
We
the
all
aspect
agree.
of really trying to help other people see when we bring people to the farm, we're wanting people to see the value of what we do and to encourage them to, if they can't do it themselves, to go out and support other people who have the skills and or maybe even for them to learn skills.
Yeah,
It's really teaching the way to thrive and to be part of a community that really counts on and contributes to
right. Which is a
that
good
great
point.
community.
Like you don't always have to be you don't have to be the farmer, right? There's you don't have to develop all those skills and put in the decades worth of effort. You can also just support them with your dollars, right? And
Right.
you can also support them. We've talked about this in other episodes. Just understanding what that support means, like how many we talked about how many apples you could eat. Like I think there was something like if everybody ate a bushel of apples every year, that would take care of most of Maine's apple crops. We talked about how you can get milk and meat locally in Maine, and we have the top sugaring county in the nation. So there's so many things that we do have here. And it's great to have a lot of people farming, but it's also just as important to, you don't have to have the skills. You just have to have the knowledge of where to go to get the food or the
Right.
fine products or the home goods, whatever it is. You can find it here.
Yep. I think
Yeah.
the resources like what Real Maine is doing is helping to have us be known is a really important aspect as well.
Yeah, well, we're happy to hear that. We're it's definitely a group effort when we start talking about reminding people what the value is behind these products. So it's exciting to me. I enjoy talking with all of our farmers and growers and producers and learning about the connections, because I think that's definitely been a theme in our first season of these podcast episodes. It's um, people are very humbled, people are very energized by this as well. So we've got just a few more moments here, minutes I should say. We're gonna close out with kind of one final question to both of you. I guess we'll start with because we're just kind of coming into the start of the new year. We're going into 2022, and so I'm curious to know what you're looking forward to. Matt, we'll start with you. How are you going to start the new year, and what are you looking forward to?
Well, I was looking forward to the ag show, but we can't go to that this year, so I'm a
Yeah.
little bummed about that. But I'm looking forward to expanding and growing and figuring out what I need for the upcoming year and how to make a better tree for everybody. It truly is a labor of love. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to, and just having this stuff be over so we can get back to normal. Uh,
Yeah,
I'm sure I'm not the only one. So.
yeah, those are
Yeah.
good items on the list. Marty, Marianne, how about you?
Well, we're looking at um, downsizing in some ways. I'm looking at retiring. What does that mean? It means I get to do what I want to do when I want to do it, which is a lot of the same things that I've been doing all along. But we're also looking at possibly developing more wholesale
Mm,
outlets. What
yeah,
else?
Yeah. We've got a season coming to for maple syrup. We sold out of our maple syrup, so my mind is already shifting to kind of getting ready for knowing where we're going to be. We're going to increase the number of trees we tap and finding people to help with that and then look forward to a small batch of lambs being born in the spring. But then there's all the maintenance on the farm. Love going out and walking through the woods and the fields to kind of see how things are changing over time. And
I think we're also looking at figuring out how to have other people do part of the work, employees maybe, which we've kind of resisted up till now because we've had good volunteers. But we may actually be looking for friends and neighbors willing to
work part-time.
work here with us.
Yep. We participate in Wolf, the Willing
Oh, yeah.
Workers on Organic Farms, and have had apprentices here and meet great young people who are some interested in farming. And actually, we had a couple of woofers who now have a farm nearby with a sheep dairy. So that's been very encouraging and satisfying to see that. But I think looking forward to having people come to the farm, continuing to come to the farm and learn, and enjoy the place we feel is a pretty special place.
Yeah. Well, thank you both, or all three of you, I should say, for sharing those thoughts. I think sounds like we got to find more ways to help our farmers network on our end, and hopefully we'll continue to spread the word about why it's important to buy local, to choose local, and figuring out the variety. That's what we're looking forward to in the upcoming year, and certainly launching season 2 of our podcast. So I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank our listeners. It's been a pleasure to get to know everyone, and thank you both so much for.
Thank
We
you very
appreciate
much.
the opportunity.
Yes, very much.
Yeah,
Thank you
you're
for thinking of
welcome.
me. So I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, take care.
Okay, bye now.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Harvesting Maine, brought to you by Real Maine, a promotional program of the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. Learn more at realmaine.com.